The World Beyond Evermore by T.K. Wilson. A follow-up to The Wizard and the Dragon, one of the many tales of Evermore. Find more at logosophia.com/tag/Evermore. Erdwulf could still feel the sting of the dragon's blood on his hands, though they had long been clean. Katrina slept, curled up like a cat on his sofa, while he sat beside her on the floor, watching her, still unwilling to let the young human woman out of his sight. His sisters, Berdine and Etta, lay on the floor nearby, both of them asleep. One thing was for certain, they had to be better prepared for incursions by the evil ones. It was his job to prepare them, all of them, for the next time a wizard rolled into town. Katrina awoke in the dimness of Erdwulf's home, sore and disoriented. Where was she? Why was it so dark? "Erdwulf!" she called out. The ogre on the floor beside her woke up with a start. His sisters, roused by Katrina's cry, were on their feet in a second. "Kitty, you're safe. We're in my sitting room, Kitty." She grabbed his tunic and sniffled a little. "Sorry, I got scared for a second." "It's all right," Erdwulf soothed. He patted her back and felt her flinch. He withdrew a little, thinking she was afraid of him. "I'm sorry. Perhaps I shouldn't have touched you." "No, it's all right. I'm just sore and it hurts to be touched." "Well, that we can fix. Let's get her a nice warm bath," said Berdine, helping Katrina up. "Do we have any fresh clothes for her to put on?" asked Etta. "Best ask Rosalba. She'll know." Etta nodded and went out the door to hunt up the dryad. Berdine took Katrina to the bathroom and lit the crystal lamps. The usual bathroom equipment was there, but the bathtub was ogre-sized and made out of marble, something Katrina found very luxurious. Berdine began filling the tub, with a tap no less, adding Elysium to the water. "I guess I should have expected the tub to be huge," said Katrina, amused. "Come test the water." Katrina swished the water around with her arm. "Perfect." The ogress looked around awkwardly. Do you need any help getting—" "Oh, no, I'm fine. You go on." Berdine gratefully left the room. Erdwulf sat at his kitchen table, tapping a pencil, trying to think of anything he needed to fortify Evermore. They would need more weapons for certain, and emergency food stores. Stronger wards on the Elysium tree and on Rosalba's garden above ground. He needed more troops. Most of his men were women, and he was hesitant to send them into battle. But knowing Lady Catriona of Meridian as he did, he wondered if she would be able to help them. Katrina came out of the bathroom feeling very much better in a very pretty peach peasant dress that Rosalba had found for her. She hunted around until she found the ogre siblings in the kitchen making breakfast and talking. "I don't know, Wolf. You weren't there. You don't know," Etta was saying. "Surely there could be no harm in asking. The child is too little to know." "Oh, she's taking no chances," said Berdine. "She's already taking them into isolation." Tempted by the smell of toast and bacon, Katrina came in. "Hello, everyone." "Have a seat, Kitty," said Erdwulf. He glanced shyly at her. "You look very nice." "Thank you." Berdine served her a plate loaded with eggs, bacon, and toast. "Eat up, you need it. I doubt you've had anything to eat for a while." Katrina shook her head, already tucking into the toast. Etta wiped her fingers from eating bacon. "Boy is so bright, and you know how precocious elvish children are." "I understand her ladyship's predicament, but that doesn't negate her obligations to us." "It's a pickle, and no mistake." Katrina finished her mouthful. "What's going on?" "I must lay out supplies for future wizard attacks. More weapons, food, water, and have fresh wards put up. I'm not sure how much our patroness, Lady Catriona, can or will help." "I think she would approve of your prudence, Erdwulf." "That's for sure, but will she help? That's the question," said Berdine. "Isn't there some sort of noblesse oblige?" Katrina asked. "It's complicated, Kitty. She has 2 children, twins, a girl and a boy. The boy was cursed as an infant, the results of which are unpredictable." "He can't be allowed to see suffering," said Etta. "If he does, or knows of places where help is needed to mitigate suffering, something terrible will happen." But Wolf is right, the boy is too small. He won't realize what's going on. Erdwulf nodded. He turned to Katrina. Will you come with me, Kitty? I want you to meet her ladyship, since you're involved now. Yes! Katrina practically bounced in her seat. Sisters, will you stay here while we're out? Of course, we'll handle things here. Katrina slipped on the sandals that Rosalba had found for her and waited for Erdwulf to gather his list and his axe. The pair went out the door of Erdwulf's home and made their way through the city. As they came down to the river, they found Calin. The wolver was in his human form, sitting listlessly by the river. He looked like he'd had no sleep and had been weeping, and well they knew why. In their victory over Morthon the previous night, they were forced to leave Caelin's beloved Aisling in the wizard's hands. Erdwulf knelt down by his brother-in-arms. Calin, you did the right thing. Aisling is proud of you, I'm sure. She came to me last night, he croaked. She smiled at me. I know she's proud. I'm going to Meridian. Would you like us to bring you anything? Calin thought about it. Please, a bottle of rosehip wine, and if her ladyship is willing, a red rose from the garden. If anyone, King Rodon will understand. Of course, my friend. Erdwulf and Katrina started out for the Well of the World's End. The tunnel, a swollen river in the spring, was just a little creek now with summer upon them. The water tumbled down into the pond in the abandoned Dryad Garden, where now the ogre and the human found themselves. The city of Meridian is a few miles east of here. We're on the west side of the city. If we're lucky, we can get a ride in some farmer's cart. But even then, it's not far and the road is easy, explained the Erdwulf. Katrina shook her head. I don't care. This is amazing. I mean, I've been in the old garden before, but... Then let us be off. The pair trekked across the field of grass and wildflowers toward the highway. As they walked, Katrina plucked up daisies and wove them into a flower crown. The grass smelled sweet, the air was clean, the sky was blue, a brighter blue than Katrina had ever seen. Adventure had called her, and she answered. They reached the highway, which was paved with brick, and just in the distance a walled city gleamed. See, there it is. The City of Light, the City of Roses, Meridian. Her walls are plated with white marble. The golden banner flies from every tower of her castle. Her streets are full of music. Her people are happy, exclaimed Erdwulf with a smile. Regular poet, aren't you, Erdwulf? The ogre smiled and turned his eyes down. I dabble. They walked arm in arm up the highway towards the city. They went along slowly, taking in the sights and views of the countryside. All around them were little farms, where they could see elves working in the fields. They smiled and waved to the travelers and carried on with their duties. Katrina, to their eyes, looked like one of their own people. They could tell from the badges the ogre carried that this was Erdwulf the Valiant, garrison commander of Evermore, their charge in the human world. The main gates were open when the human and the ogre arrived in the city. The high street was paved with marble, and surrounded on all sides by little shops and market stalls. Katrina looked around. It was like she stepped back in time. She wandered a few steps from Erdwulf, sidestepped a cart, and then nearly ran into a cow. The ogre smiled, bemused, and took Katrina's arm. Just stick close to me. It's busy here. She followed him, looking around at all the bright shops and interesting people. There were elves, dwarves, butterfly-winged pixies, gnomes in pointy hats, and all sorts of other people around them. She forgot her tired feet. She forgot the sorrows of her world. She only thought of her Erdwulf and the beautiful world around her. Erdwulf made his way up and up the street towards the castle on the hill. Above the gate was written in gilded letters, "To all the unhappy." Erdwulf, what's the sign over the door mean? House Meridian's gates are always open to the downtrodden who have no hope otherwise. Some of Evermore's doors have to have the same motto carved into them. As they approached the gate, a door warden stopped them. Hail Erdwulf Carson. I'm sorry to say you must leave your axe here. It is now the rule of the house. Erdwulf squinted, but did as he was bidden. And your companion? She has no weapons. She is a human elf friend. Katrina Lawson is her name. The elf nodded and allowed them to pass. The courtyard bustled with people going to and fro, some hailing and waving to Erdwulf, who sheepishly waved back. Katrina grabbed Airwolf's arm and held it, walking around beside him. They entered the castle, coming at length to the audience hall, a round room with 3 doors at the back of it. Sitting in large chairs were a handsome elf couple, both tall, fair, and dark-haired, and at their feet, laying on a blanket, were 2 tubby little toddlers. Airwolf bowed to his liege lady. Katrina called up her memory of childhood dance lessons and made quite a passable curtsy. "Hail, Airwolf Carson," said the lady elf, rising from her chair and bypassing the sleeping children. "Hail, Lady Catriona. I apologize for coming to you unannounced. It is no trouble for our garrison, Commander. We were quite concerned when you called for Birdine and Etta to come to you." "I will send them back by day's end, my lady." "Oh, there's no rush." Catriona's smile seemed slightly off. "Now, what can I do for you and your charming companion?" Katrina curtsied again. "This is Katrina Lawson, elf friend. Welcome, Katrina. The honor is mine, my lady." The lady gestured to the male elf by her side. "My husband, Lord Umission." Katrina curtsied again. "Welcome," he said with gusto. "It isn't often we have human visitors." 2 chairs, one larger and sturdier than the other, were brought in by some staff members and sat near Lady Catriona's dais. Katrina sat in the smaller of the chairs, which gave her a better look at the sleeping children. The little girl had dark hair like her mother, and the boy had almost transparently blonde hair. "Oh, how darling they are!" she sighed. Catriona smiled, but her smile was sad. "Yes, these are my children, Megan and Fingal. They're beautiful, my lady." Catriona sat back down. "Now, tell me all the news from Evermore. It's perhaps something your son shouldn't hear." Catriona sighed. "Of course, that is so." She looked wearily at her husband. "Dear, will you take the children back to the nursery?" "Yes, my love." Gwynchon gently shook one, then the other. They fussed and cried a little, but were soon alert and looking around. Megan hid a bit behind her brother, while he studied the strangers. Katrina smiled and waved to them. Fingal's serious little expression didn't change as he waved back. Their father gathered the twins up in his arms, whooping playfully. "Come, my little birds, back to your room now." Once in her father's grasp, Megan shrank and hid her eyes shyly behind her father's hair, while Fingal looked steadfastly at them, curious and bold, until they disappeared behind the door to the left of the thrones. Katrina turned back to her garrison commander. "All should be well now. Tell me all." Airwolf told her everything, of the battle with Morthon and the dragon, the betrayal of his cousin, the second loss of Aisling, and of Katrina's heroism. "So, my lady, I wish for more weapons, supplies, and strong rewards, which you and your husband will have to set. I admire your forethought in this matter, and will of course give you everything you desire." "Including the wards?" "Of course. Did you think that would be lacking?" "I know how reluctant you are to leave your children." "They will be safe enough here while Yunshon and I come to Evermore for a few hours." She rose from her seat. "Now follow me and choose what you will from the armory." Airwolf went about his duties swiftly, choosing what would best fit for their urban warfare. Smaller weapons, crossbows, short swords, and various pieces of armor. For himself he chose a short, double-headed axe, much handier in close quarters than his bearded axe. He saw an empty scabbard among all the bits of armor and pulled it out. It was curiously shaped, almost like the rose quartz dagger that Katrina found at the well. If it didn't quite fit, it would be easy enough to adjust. Airwolf came out of the armory to see Katrina waiting for him. "I asked Lady Catriona about food and water. She'll make sure we have a good store of everything every month." "Thank you, Kitty. You're so good to me. To us." Katrina shifted her feet sheepishly. Catriona approached them from the audience hall, eager to see what Airwolf found. "Is there anything else I can do for you? You've been more than generous. I could put some of these back." "No. The fewer weapons, the better." Airwolf cleared his throat awkwardly. "There is one thing. Kaelin requested a bottle of rosehip wine and, if he may be so bold, a red rose from King Rodon's bush." Those we would gladly give. I'll just go get the wine. My lady. Catriona turned. The smallest bottle possible, please. She nodded and headed right away to the wine cellar. Edward followed her, leaving his supplies with the armory sergeant-at-arms. Catriona trailed behind until she could catch up and walk by Erdwulf's side. Catriona met them at the audience hall with a small bottle of wine in one hand and a bud vase already filled in the other. Here, pick the flower you like best. Thank you again, my lady. Kitty, will you carry those, please? I would be happy to. Catriona bowed as she took the wine and the vase from Catriona. The elf looked down on her gently. I should like to speak to you alone, Catriona, elf friend. All right. Erdwulf nodded and went out the door to the right of the thrones. Catriona sat down on her throne and gestured for Catriona to sit on a footstool beside her. You have made Erdwulf so happy, Catriona. He carries such a burden, and I'm afraid it will only get heavier. Your light and joy will help him. My light? I don't understand. Just know that it's true. Keep watch on him. Take care of him. She reached under her throne and pulled out a box and handed it to Catriona. Open it. It's for you. Catriona opened her box to find an exquisite hand mirror inside. It's a magic mirror that will allow you to contact us here or to keep watch on Erdwulf and your friends in Evermore. Catriona cradled it in her hands and looked at it. It was all gold, with the sun and moon symbol of meridian on the back and enameled red and white roses around the rim of the glass. It's so beautiful, my lady. Thank you. Catriona also offered him a leather bag stamped with the sun and moon. You might find it easier to carry this way. Catriona put the mirror in the box and slid the box and the wine bottle into the bag. Catriona then pointed to the door on the right. You'll find the Erdwulf in the garden. Just keep hunting for him and you'll find him. Thank you again, Lady Catriona, and I promise I won't call on you unless it's an absolute necessity. I was told about your son. The elf gave a sad smile. Go. Erdwulf is waiting, and probably impatiently. Catriona exited the keep and into the garden. Its beauty rivaled the local botanical gardens she had been to. The flowers grew in a riot about her. The grass was smooth and emerald green. Everywhere she saw the little pointed hats of garden gnomes hard at work among the flowers. Ahead of her stood a pavilion housing a huge white climbing rose bush. Beyond the pavilion stood a magnificent red rose bush. Bush hardly seemed the right word. It was a tree laden with blood-red flowers and deep green leaves. Erdwulf was on his knees before the tree, speaking just loud enough for Catriona to make out. You understand it, your highness. You know what pain it is to love and to risk and to lose. I long for counsel, but you cannot give it. How I wish you could, my lord Rodon. Let me take a flower from your branches, just one, for my friend Caelan, who is suffering for the loss of his love. Erdwulf got to his feet and carefully nipped off a flower with a knife. He turned and saw Catriona waiting for him in the pavilion. Kitty, good you're here. He nodded at the tree. Your pardon, my lord. Catriona took the rose from Erdwulf and placed it in the vase. Did you remember the wine? Right here. Catriona patted the bag. Excellent. He looked up at the sky. My, is it that late already? We should get home. The pair walked out the garden gate, made their way through the courtyard, and down into the city. It was now getting toward evening, and the shops were beginning to wrap up business. They rolled up the sidewalks early around here, Catriona commented. Yes, your people work far too much, in our opinion. Catriona laughed. I think you're right. As they made their way back to the old dryad garden, Erdwulf looked at Catriona. I suppose you're wondering what all that in front of the rose bush was, said Erdwulf. I did have a few questions, said Catriona. Well, perhaps I can explain it in song form. Erdwulf cleared his throat and began to sing in a clear baritone voice. Solana sits in her lonely room, sewing a silken seam, looking out on the western march, on all the roses green, and Solana sits in her lonely bower, sewing a silken thread, and longs to be in the western march, among the roses red. She's let her work fall at her heel, the needle to her toe, and she has gone out to the march as fast as she can go. She's but pulled a rose, and only one, when then appeared a fair tree man. Says, "Lady, let alone. What makes you pull a rose? What makes you break the tree? What makes you come out to the march without the leave of me?" All too soon they arrived back in Evermore. Evermore delivered the new arms to his second-in-command, Cullen, all but the scabbard he'd found for Katrina's dagger. He found her comforting Kaelin in his infirmary. "With her ladyship's compliments," she was saying, handing over the wine and the rose. "She's very sorry for your loss." Kaelin nodded. "Thank you, Katrina. Don't go drinking all by yourself." "Katrina, you misunderstand. I didn't want this for myself. I needed it for a restorative in my medical kit." "Oh!" "Yes, but the rosehip wine is the exclusive province of the Lady of Meridian, so that's why I had to have you ask for me." He smelled the rose appreciatively. "But thank you for retrieving this for me." "That was Erdwulf, thank him." Erdwulf leaned on the door frame, indulging in a moment of fantasy, imagining Katrina as the mistress of Evermore, always here to comfort and guide. A little home with a little wife. He immediately despised himself. How could he be so selfish as to even think of bringing Katrina down here? It was as ridiculous as the mole in Thumbelina, he argued with himself. It wasn't sensible. And yet, even after he'd had a true berserker attack, she'd taken care of him without fear. She'd kissed him without fear. What should he do? What could he do? No matter what he did, he couldn't stop wishing for her love. He was interrupted in his reverie by Katrina touching his arm. "I've had a wonderful day." "I'm happy to hear it." Erdwulf offered her the scabbard. "For your crystal knife. I want you to carry it as much as you can. I will teach you how to fight with it." She took it from him. She hugged the mirror to her chest. "I suppose I should go home." "Yes, I suppose you should." "Will you walk me up?" Erdwulf nodded. "Of course. And have no fear. Once we learned you were missing, we locked up your apartment." "Thank you, that's a relief." The mismatched pair made their way up to Katrina's apartment, through the secret ways and shadows of the world above. The long summer twilight was burning low as they emerged from the tunnel nearest Katrina's home, so they were comparatively safe. Katrina brushed her fingers across the back of Erdwulf's hand, and managed to hook her pinky in his. He stopped for a second and looked at their hands. Katrina changed her mind and slipped her hand securely into Erdwulf's. He said nothing, only giving her hand a light squeeze. They arrived at the familiar veranda and back door. The light in the kitchen was shining, spilling a puddle of light onto the wooden planks. They stood each on one side of the light, their joined hands between them. Yoga released her hand and picked it back up. He kissed it gently, with as much grace as he could. Katrina watched him soberly, like she were a real royal lady. "Be safe, Katrina." "No, you be safe. I'll come to you tomorrow." Erdwulf nodded, then melted into the darkness.